1961 Chevrolet Impala versus 1961 Ford Galaxie. Who did it best? Which would you pick? In 1961, America was changing. The highways were expanding, suburbs were spreading, and the automobile was no longer simply a machine that carried a family from one place to another. It had become a symbol of success, freedom, power, and status. And in the middle of that transformation, two giants entered the fight. From Chevrolet came the 1961 Impala, a name already associated with style and prestige. From Ford came the 1961 Galaxie, a new full-size contender designed to capture the attention of an increasingly demanding American public. Both were large, both could be powerful, both promised comfort, style, and presence. But behind those chrome grilles was something far more important, a battle for the American driveway. And more than 6 decades later, one question remains surprisingly difficult to answer. Which company really understood the American buyer better? At first glance, the answer might seem obvious. The Impala had Chevrolet's enormous General Motors design and engineering resources behind it. The Galaxie carried Ford's determination to challenge Chevrolet in one of America's most important automotive categories. But the real story isn't decided by horsepower alone. Because in 1961, buyers weren't simply asking, which car is faster? They were asking, which one looked more expensive? Which one felt more powerful? Which one offered more for the money? Which one would make the neighbors look twice?
And perhaps most importantly, which car would still feel like the right choice 5 years later? That is where this rivalry becomes much more complicated. To understand the battle, we have to go back to the beginning. The United States had emerged from the 1950s with an enormous appetite for automobiles. Cars had grown larger, styling had become increasingly dramatic, and manufacturers were competing not merely to transport families, but to sell an entire lifestyle. Chevrolet and Ford were already locked in one of the industry's most important rivalries. Every new model represented millions of dollars in engineering, manufacturing, advertising, and corporate ambition. A successful car could strengthen a company's position. A failure could send customers straight across the showroom floor to a competitor. And in 1961, the stakes were rising. The 1961 model year arrived during a fascinating moment in American automotive history. The extravagant styling of the late 1950s was beginning to change. Buyers still wanted large, impressive automobiles, but manufacturers were entering a new era of design. Chevrolet, part of General Motors, redesigned its full-size lineup for 1961. The Impala sat at the top of Chevrolet's passenger car hierarchy, offering the combination of size, styling, comfort, and available performance that buyers had come to expect from a premium Chevrolet. Ford was fighting back with its own redesigned full-size range. The Galaxie name had become increasingly important to Ford as the company sought to compete directly with Chevrolet and other major American manufacturers. These weren't insignificant showroom products. They were statements. The Impala represented Chevrolet's vision of what a modern American full-size car should be. The Galaxie represented Ford's answer. And underneath the chrome, glass, steel, and polished paint was a much larger question. When two of America's biggest automobile manufacturers build cars for the same customer, which one actually gets the formula right? The answer would not be found in a single specification. It would be hidden somewhere between design, power, price, comfort, ambition, and what American buyers truly wanted in 1961. And before this rivalry is over, one of these two cars will have to make the stronger case. But which one? Now the rivalry gets serious. Because once the 1961 Chevrolet Impala and Ford Galaxie reached the showroom, the battle was no longer about promises. Buyers could finally walk around them, open the doors, sit behind the wheel, and decide where their money would go. The first battlefield was design. Chevrolet's 1961 full-size cars abandoned some of the excesses of the late 1950s and moved toward a cleaner, more sculpted shape. The Impala still looked substantial, but its styling was becoming more controlled. Ford answered with a completely redesigned full-size lineup. The Galaxie carried a more restrained, formal appearance, while its distinctive rooflines gave buyers several different personalities to choose from. And this mattered. In 1961, a car parked outside a suburban home wasn't invisible transportation, it was part of the owner's identity. But then came the question that could change everything.
What was underneath the hood?
The Galaxie offered a 223 cubic inch six-cylinder rated at 135 horsepower, along with V8 choices including the 292 and 352. Ford's 390 cubic inch V8 was rated at 300 horsepower. Chevrolet had its own serious ammunition. The Impala could be ordered with powerful V8 engines, and during 1961, Chevrolet introduced the legendary 409 cubic inch V8. In its 360 horsepower form, it transformed the Impala from a large family automobile into something much more threatening. Suddenly, the comparison wasn't simply Chevrolet versus Ford. It was becoming a battle of engineering philosophies. Ford had a powerful 390, Chevrolet had the 409, and the numbers were beginning to whisper that this wasn't going to be an ordinary family car comparison. But here is where the obvious answer begins to collapse. If horsepower decided everything, Chevrolet would have an easy argument. It didn't, because most people buying a full-size car in 1961 weren't purchasing a dedicated race machine. They needed something they could live with, something comfortable, something impressive, something capable of carrying a family and still making the owner feel like they had bought something special. And that changed the meaning of performance. A massive engine might attract attention, but it also represented another question. How much car did you actually need? For some buyers, the answer was simple. They wanted the biggest engine available. For others, smoothness, comfort, styling, and value mattered just as much. The winner would therefore have to satisfy more than the person standing at the traffic light.
It had to satisfy the person signing the purchase agreement. Then there was another weapon neither company could ignore: choice. Ford's 1961 Galaxie range gave buyers multiple body styles and engine configurations. Its full-size cars rode on a 119-inch wheelbase, creating the long, substantial proportions Americans expected from a large automobile of the era. Chevrolet was playing a similar game with the Impala, but Chevrolet had something else developing inside the Impala story. The Super Sport package appeared during the 1961 model year, transforming the Impala's image from premium family car toward genuine performance machine. And this is where the story takes a dangerous turn, because suddenly, the Impala wasn't merely competing with Ford's comfortable full-size cars. It was beginning to challenge the idea of what a family automobile could become. A car could be spacious on Monday morning and intimidating on Saturday night. That combination would become enormously important to Chevrolet's identity. But Ford wasn't standing still. Its available 390 cubic inch V8 already delivered 300 horsepower, and the Galaxie offered the kind of large car presence that had made full-size Fords serious competitors. The strange part was that both companies were chasing the same customer while telling different stories. Chevrolet was selling the idea of style mixed with increasingly serious performance. Ford was offering a broad, full-size package built around choice, size, comfort, and V8 power. Neither approach was obviously wrong, and that created the real problem.
Because if the question is simply, which car had more power, the answer can be found in a specification sheet. But if the question is, which car did 1961 America actually need, the answer becomes much harder. The rivalry had now moved beyond chrome and horsepower. It had become a contest over the future of the American automobile. And with the most important evidence still waiting to be examined, performance, value, identity, and the legacy these cars would leave behind, the final verdict was getting closer. Everything now comes down to one question. Did Chevrolet build the better American car in 1961, or did Ford quietly build the smarter one? By now, the evidence points to an uncomfortable truth. There was no single category in which the 1961 Chevrolet Impala simply destroyed the 1961 Ford Galaxie. The real battle was about balance. The 1961 Impala arrived as part of Chevrolet's redesigned full-size lineup, combining a dramatic new body with a wide range of engines. The 409 V8 gave Chevrolet something Ford could not ignore: a powerful new performance image attached to a car that could still serve as a family automobile. But Ford's Galaxie had its own weapon: versatility. The 1961 Galaxie offered a broad selection of body styles and engines, including the 390 cubic inch V8. Ford understood that not every customer wanted the most powerful machine available. Some wanted comfort, some wanted practicality, others simply wanted a large, impressive Ford sitting in their driveway. And that distinction matters.
Because the question was never really which car could make the biggest number, it was which car gave the buyer the strongest overall package. For styling, Chevrolet's Impala had a powerful argument.
Its 1961 redesign gave it a cleaner, more modern appearance, while the available Impala Supersport package added a performance-oriented personality. For power, Chevrolet's 409 created a story that would become legendary. For versatility, however, Ford's Galaxie remained a formidable opponent. And for a buyer walking into a dealership in 1961, that choice could come down to something far more personal than horsepower. It could come down to identity. And this is where the 1961 comparison becomes bigger than two cars. The decisions made during this period helped shape the performance car culture that would explode across America during the 1960s. Chevrolet's development of the 409 was particularly important. The engine would become closely associated with Chevrolet's growing performance image and would later gain an entirely different kind of fame through popular culture. The Impala itself would continue evolving, becoming one of America's most recognizable full-size nameplates. Ford's Galaxie would also remain central to Ford's full-size strategy throughout the decade, with increasingly powerful engines and new styling reflecting the rapidly changing American market. The lesson was becoming clear. American buyers wanted more than transportation. They wanted choice. They wanted power when they wanted it, comfort when they needed it, and styling that told the world something about who they were. And that demand would eventually push Detroit toward an even more dramatic era. The muscle car revolution was approaching. But before that explosion, cars like the Impala and Galaxie were already laying the groundwork. So now comes the question we opened with: 1961 Chevrolet Impala or 1961 Ford Galaxie? Who did it best? If the category is performance potential, the Impala has a compelling advantage. Its available 409 cubic inch V8 gave the Chevrolet a serious performance identity, and the Supersport package pushed the Impala toward territory that would become increasingly important as the 1960s progressed. If the category is styling and presence, the answer becomes subjective, but the Impala again makes a powerful case. Its proportions and design helped establish the visual identity that would make the nameplate so recognizable. But if the category is versatility, Ford deserves enormous credit. The Galaxie offered buyers a wide range of configurations and body styles, giving Ford a strong answer for customers who wanted different combinations of performance, comfort, and practicality. So which one wins overall? The 1961 Chevrolet Impala takes the edge. Not because the Galaxie was a failure. It wasn't. The Impala wins because Chevrolet managed to combine several increasingly important qualities into one package: full-size comfort, striking design, broad engine availability, and the emerging promise of serious performance. The Galaxie was an excellent answer to the American full-size car market, but the Impala felt like it was pointing toward where the market was going.